Hello everyone and welcome to another commented replay of Airland Battle, brought to you by Doke Doke and Kent Game Guides. This match I actually chose because it was a very interesting match. It was a public match. I wasn't playing with any friends or anything like that, so as always with those games you never really know what you're going to get out of it, if your teammate's going to leave immediately, if they even know how to play the game, or if they're a hardcore veteran. So in this match, you'll get to see what happens. Once again, I know it's the same as the last video, but it's Highway to Oslo, which is the remake of Highway to Hell from European Escalation. It's starting 1,000 points, 2,000 victory points, straight confrontation and destruction. And I'm playing the Poles again. You guys saw how much I love the napalm in the last video. You'll get to see it once again with this one. So we load into the game here. Obviously we're playing on the pack side. I'm going to go with the strategy again of going for Fedor. And as you can see, I'm chatting with my teammate to see if they don't mind going for Sheraton. Just a habit of mine to go for Fedor, I guess. If you ever play against me, remember that, and you'll probably see me on that side. Starting with the pretty usual couple infantry units, CV. Gonna go with a recon here, and I think I go with a couple T-55s, or maybe another infantry unit. Of course, need some AA. This is my revised deck. As you can see, I added in some infrared AA. You really do need to have that with Airland Battle. You need to have the long-range radar AA mixed with the infrared, because if you're playing against a competent air-heavy opponent, they can just absolutely crush you with their ability to seek out your radar launching AA, and then if you don't have anything other than radar, you can't hit them. And at this point, I'm getting a little worried because I haven't heard it all from my teammate. Generally, they put up a flare or something like that. You guys know in public games how that general code of conduct works. And he doesn't seem to be putting down a lot of units here. Now, he's got one AA, command vehicle, infantry unit, and a tank. It looks like a T-64, a decent tank. And then he also has his FOB. And I mean, I'm always a little concerned with the new ability to use the Ural or just basic trucks to bring in infantry, but this is one scenario where I think it can work, is at the beginning of the battle, if you know there's a defensive position, a town or a forest you want to get to quickly, they're pretty fast and they're so cost effective that if you don't have to worry about protecting your soldiers as they move into position, they can be a great alternative. However, if he ends up getting rushed there on the right hand side, they're going to be able to just one-shot kill each of those, even with, well, really any unit, because they have 0 armor. So that makes them very vulnerable in that sense. And again, he only has those 4 units put down there, so we'll see what happens. We're playing against Colonel Scott and Slapnuts, which is a wonderful name, I might add, for creativity points. And I start moving my guys over there to the left. I like to sort out and go through, put my command vehicle where I want it, my AA where I want it, etc. as they're moving, unit by unit, assign where they're going. And for you new players, this is incredibly helpful for you if you do this, is just take your whole group that is going on one flank or one direction, move them to a central location near that, so that way they start heading towards where they should be, and as they're in transition, you can then assign where you want each unit. If I had not done this, then the T-55s I just assigned would still be back at the spawn point. And that means they're going to be then 20 seconds late getting to everything else. So, quick, easy tip for those new players who may be watching. Again, I'm going to be plopping down a recon here in the middle of the highway. As I mentioned in the last video, with Highway to Oslo, an opponent can go from one end of the map to the other on that central highway because it sits in a valley, and your line of sight can't see that generally. And again, this is getting me more and more worried because my teammate here, Apple Tart, he doesn't seem to know the move fast command because his trucks and his tanks are moving diagonally across fields in the most direct path, not the fastest path. If you just click somewhere, they're going to go wherever well, a straight line to that position, but the move fast command will enable them to use the roads, so that way it's fastest. I like to keep my AA hidden there in that wood line. As always, I'll be putting some infantry in the town. And this game's going a little quicker. Obviously, they got to Boris pretty quickly. And again, I chose this replay because it really turns out to be a great fight. I know there was a comment on the last video about how it was a bit of a steamroll or a one-way battle in the last one. Wanted to provide a little bit more of a competitive one here this time. And already my recon has spotted that they're moving up some units there into Elena, and that concerns me a little bit that they're being that aggressive, especially considering my teammate still is making his way across the vast prairie land of the right flank. And for that measure, I'm putting my T-55s a little bit more to the left than I would have, just to make sure, in case they're rushing my reinforcement point here, calling in some more AA and some troops. And at this point, after seeing them there, I figure I have one of two possibilities. I can push in there real quick and engage them and try to catch them by surprise and hope that they don't have too much support or maybe not any AA up there. But if I do that, I risk then just being completely counterattacked by a superior force with both of them attacking me. And I don't really know if I can count on my teammate here. He does seem to be calling in some reinforcements, though. As you can see, they're coming in from Fedor, so that's good. At least I know he knows how to call in new units. Still haven't heard him say anything yet. Which, I mean, communication is so key in this game. It really is, that it was concerning to me. And at this point, I decide that of my two options, I'm going to just fortify my positions, because I figure if they're aggressive enough there to go to Elena, chances are they'll be aggressive enough to come to me, into my positions. And I know that inside this prairie land right here, between the town, between the two cities here, you can just catch them in a complete fire cone from both sides of the T-55s, and then my stuff in the woodland there. Or if they come up over that valley, my troops are going to be so entrenched that I'll be able to take out pretty much any force that comes to me. However, of course, the downside with this is now they have also captured Elena. I am at a huge point disadvantage now, where they're getting in much more income than I am. And, you know, it's... on this map, considering we're working towards 2,000 points, we start it with 1,000, and it's a 2v2, I don't put that much weight in them having Elena. I just don't, because it's so much more of it is about what you kill. And if you put yourself in a proper position, they can send 500 points of heavy tanks my way. But if I play it right and I hit those tanks on the flank, if they come up through that valley or through that farmland there, then it's not going to matter. I mean, they can have the income advantage, but I'm going to get to 2,000 quicker. Of course, you run into problems of them being able to field more, to say, attack helicopters or air support. And over here on the right, you can see he finally captured Gregory. I was glad to see he was putting in some defensive positions in the forest line. And as usual, and as with my first video that I showed you guys, I decided I'm going to start moving up a little bit here. And I don't really have the intention of really entrenching myself in their reinforcement zone. I just want to kind of probe and put some pressure there, and I figure if anything else, I'll also get to scout what they're fielding. So I move up some AA, 2 T-55s, and 2 infantry transports, and I say that's going to be it. That's what I'll send up there. The toes knock out pretty quickly my teammates' forces there, and I find that he has brought in some artillery and counters that, and he actually gets 2 kills. 3 kills, actually, it looks like, now that I take a closer look, from that counter battery, which, well, it shocked me. Again, I did not have confidence in my teammate, but we'll see how that plays out later. He now has his infantry moving in on foot up to the ridge line there, trying to get them in a better position, which will be interesting because the Concours are anti-tank infantry versus tow launchers. Not really sure how that'll work. And then our opponent counterbatters his artillery, and I also noticed that he doesn't have them grouped, but maybe that's just for his micromanagement. Who am I to judge that? Again, just double checking that he has his defensive position secure. He pulls up a PT, which again raises my confidence in him a little bit, to be honest. Opponent starts firing on his infantry. Mine move up closer to their reinforcement point. The T-55 and the AA are having a little bit of trouble moving up on that left flank, and that'll cause me problems in the end. And now I see that he's also moving something from Elena over to Dmitry there. So I'm hoping that they don't make a push to the right-hand side, or that if they do, I can at the very least come in before they can. And right here, what I'm doing is I'm taking my napalm bomber, and I'm just going to say I'm going to take a wild stab in the dark that they got there so quickly. It's an unarmored CV. It's a complete guess. I'm just going to fire into that woodland because in my experience that's the most common place for them to put their CVs. We'll see what happens. I then decide, and this is something else that's good to do, to bring in my MiG. Now I do that before I actually see any other fighters, and the reason I do this is that by the time they see my bomber, if they launch a fighter immediately, it'll be able to come in and try to take it out and then leave before I get my fighter in there. So this at the very least allows mine to be on the field and get caught up there. And it turns out I didn't have to really worry about any AA. The bomber did take one hit, but he still evac'd in time, and now that forest is ablaze. Since we don't have the replay function, I have no way of knowing whether or not the CV was actually in there. All I know is that I did not kill it, and much to my dismay, they have taken Dmitry, which puts us in an even larger point disadvantage. And I start assembling over there, a bit of a force to go into Elena in the future. I take out his MD Jupiter real quick just so that way he doesn't have eyes over there. I'm hoping by now he hasn't noticed me. And then I want to move those infantry carriers over to put the infantry into the buildings. As you can see, my AA is lagging behind because of the terrain, and he can't try to take out that tornado, which is unfortunate. My infantry carriers do make it to the buildings in time. This provides me a great strategic advantage of having those entrenched, and then, well, as you can see, they bring in helicopters to counter that. And that's a very risky move on their part, because if my AA was up there, they would be in a bit of trouble. They really would be, because they're very, very vulnerable being that point close range, and they can't see exactly what's in that forest. So they're firing away, and I bring in my MiG-21 Biz, which ends up being a mistake because, well, the Super Cobra takes out the MiG, which surprised me a little bit. Now my teammate is deciding to fire an artillery barrage into the helicopters here in the forest, which had me a little bit concerned that if I moved up my T-55s, they'd get hit by friendly fire. And you can just see I have their complete attention over here. I looked and I saw that both the players are focusing on me on this side, and that's exactly what I wanted out of this. I lost one troop carrier and one squad of infantry, but I wanted the focus to be over here. And this was the other dangerous part, is that, as you saw, I was completely ambushed by some units in the forest because it's so thick. The T-55 ends up getting a little bit of retribution, though, which made me feel all good and warm and fuzzy inside. Now what I'm doing here is preparing a bit of a counter force to try to move into Elena, and we'll see what that looks like once it's all ready. Again, they have a huge point advantage, and they already have a 100-point lead, which is not much at all. And then they say in chat, LOL, you guys are going to literally camp our spawns, how good you are. Or, excuse me, how goo you are. At this point, I decided it's probably best not to encourage them by saying anything. I think most Wargame players will find it perfectly acceptable to attack a reinforcement point. I don't really think I've ever heard anybody seriously complain about that tactic, other than that it wins and loses games. They continue to shell the buildings there, but they don't have a corrected shot, so the area of effect is pretty large, and it doesn't actually end up doing anything. I now have some units there, and really, with this, I just wanted to see what they had entrenched, so I brought up the recon as well. There's the recon, and brought in an AA too because they seem pretty heavy on countering things with air. That really, really showed me a lot about how to play this game versus my two opponents, that as soon as they as soon as they were cornered with a threat there at the reinforcement point, the first thing they bring in to counter it is 2 Super Cobras and a helicopter. And that really points to me that they're going to rely on that to counter this too. We can see that we have their AA scouted there. And then they have some tow launchers, M901 sitting in the forest line. I think they take out my recon, was it? No, they haven't taken anything out yet. They missed my T-72, and there's also something in the other forest line directly ahead of me. I made a bit of a just micromanagement mistake of not getting my recon up there sooner. Because of that, I just lost a unit, and these troop carriers, unfortunately, are going to be a bit of a sacrifice. They continue getting hits on them, but thankfully the M901s are focusing on my T-72. I'm hoping its frontal armor can hold out against them. I just took out one there. I bring in a napalm strike, but it immediately gets taken out there by the tornado, which is unfortunate. And now all I'm left with is a T-72. It was poorly played on my part, and I should have just at this point retreated them. I should have, but I didn't. One nice thing though is it looks like we killed their AA, their Hawk that was sitting back there by those buildings. That will end up helping us in the future. I think I called it a napalm strike, but I'm not seeing it anywhere. And I decided to just... they were pissing me off. I just wanted to finish them. Again, though, not the best decision on my part as a player. I should have withdrawn them, but I did not. Here comes that napalm strike that is just way too late, and I should have executed earlier. And I think he does get away there, because the Hawk's gone. He was able to get away. I don't get any kills from that directly, but at the very least, it's gonna burn down the forest there and panic or stun those opponents. Now, here's where I get smart. I call in 3 arty pieces. I think it was Selkaris who, in a couple of his videos, really mentioned how effective the smoke screens can be in airland battle. And I have come to be a true believer of that. So many games, smoke screens have made the difference between a win and a loss. And I really hope in this one you guys will be able to see exactly how effective they can be. He's now bringing in 3 AA units. Unfortunately, my guys are just all barely out of range to get a shot off on them, which is very unfortunate, but I do end up getting the Hawk here, I think. Yep, the Hawk's down, but then the rest of the units he gets out of there in time, and of course now his attention's focused back here, and he'll try to counter that. I try to move my T-50 up just a little bit closer, hoping I can sneak a shot off, but I'm not able to. And now he brings in 4 supply logistic trucks, which just made my day, because he gave me ammunition. It allowed me to repair the T-55s. It was an early Christmas present. Over here I can see in their tree line that they have more M901s. And I focus my artillery on that, hoping to take a couple out. So does my teammate. And again, at this point, if you look over to there to the right, there's been no activity. He's held his own. In public matches, sometime a teammate holding one flank and not aggressing is more than enough that you can ask for. On the left, they bring in 2 Alpha Jets to bomb my T-55s. Takes out 1 T-55. It's then en route, so I can't control it. It just runs away. Same with the cargo truck. Just really frustrating when that happens, but that's one of the reasons you do it, why you drop those bombs. Again, firing some more arty there on that tree line, hoping to either get them to move them back or to actually take out some units. At this point, they do have a 200-point lead still. For how far we are into this game, not that many points have been scored. And again, happy to see my teammates scored 165 points. I was way too pessimistic about him when the game started. They now bring back in those Super Cobras. More evidence to really just how their philosophy to counter threats is, and try to take advantage of that here in the future. It actually calls in another, I believe, recon helicopter there. As you can see back there, I actually left an infantry carrier vehicle just to kind of defend my left flanks. I figure they seem to be kind of offended when I went to their reinforcement zone. So a lot of players will try to take retribution and go after your own reinforcement point. So at this point, I've been a nuisance. I've been that fly that he can't get rid of. Now I'm just going to leave him there and fortify my position before I make another push. My teammate there is pulling up some AA, some Tunkses, and here you can see why I have the infantry. As it turns out, he actually did try to make a push. He sent up some recon and some MBT-70s. So at this point, I should have tried to fall back because those infantry were no match for them there in those woods with no cover, no element of surprise. But at the very least, this gives me time to get some forces together to counter. I pull in a T-72. I get ready for an airstrike, but I kind of am hesitant about it because I also don't want to hit my friendly forces there. Their attack helicopters are still attacking my infantry in the building, and decide to bring in my T-55s. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. You'll see here is that many Airland Battle players so far have complained about how heavy tanks are, especially on the pack side. But to new players, if you can hit a tank on its flank, even the heaviest tanks are going to die to even cheap tanks. For the most part, because their side armor is only 2, 3, 4, or 5 on average. So these T-55s are able to make a crucial difference there in taking out those MPT-70s. I get one T-72 who has very good frontal armor. I'm not worried about them shooting him. T-55s come in from the side and finish him off. Now, thanks to that engagement there, killing those 4 tanks in that recon, the points are actually back now at 790 versus 701. Made me very happy. Again, I send in another MiG to try to take out the Super Cobras. I am a big fan of wasting planes. It's just something I've come to love. Completely ineffective there. I call in more anti-air just to make sure that they're not able to really cause a problem for my reinforcement point. But so does my teammate. He brings his 2 Tungskas that he had brought in and brings from this side. But as you can see, as their radar-based AA, that SEAD fighter was able to take out one of them. The T-72 I'm just keeping hidden there in that tree line, keeping the T-55s where they are. And by doing that, I force my opponent to either attack the T-52s, my T-72 can attack their flank, or vice versa. Now I've gathered some infantry kind of off to the side. I've been keeping them there. I have a couple tanks with them. And here's where I start my smoke screen. I fire smoke in front of the units where I know where they are, and I knew that there's defensive positions there and to the tree line left of it. So I want to create a smoke screen in front of both of those. I don't want to create a smoke screen on top of my Unix. I want to do it blocking the line of sight of those units. So I also am given a very good hint that they have AA there shooting at that Su-25T. So I put in some more smoke there over the town, and I'll eventually do one more smoke barrage. I have a total of 8 infantry carriers and 2 T-55s just for a little bit of punch. And very, very happy with how this went. They've taken more of a lead advantage here. I'm not sure exactly where they got it from, but it is now 1140 to 765, and I feel like I'm going to lose this one. My teammate asked, how do I refill ammo for my artillery? Confirming my belief that he is a newer player. I didn't get an opportunity to see that and respond to it in this moment. However, after the game, I did try to answer a few questions for him. Very proud of his performance for being such a new player to the game. And because of those smoke screens there, you'll see here the units I'm about to kill, they have no idea where my guys are. It's just a complete slaughter of them because of it. There's the recon, couldn't see them, point blank, 40 points. There's a couple launchers, another 65 points. There's another Hawk, I believe it is, sitting there in the town, which couldn't have shot back anyways, but still I'm happy about the kill that I'm going to get from it. I move my infantry over here into this forest line. This is where their air units come in, and maybe I should have brought up some AA, but I really wasn't that worried about it. Because they hadn't used them as effectively as I thought they would have. I saw their command vehicle, instantly went after that. You see a command vehicle sitting there in the open. You have to. It's the Humvee. It has very little armor. Probably should have unloaded my troops there a little sooner. But over here I try to get rid of the flak panzers so that way I can, well, at the very least try to bring in my own air to counter. And actually I think their air does kill one of my infantry carriers over there, and I lose a couple on the right-hand side. but he didn't move the Humvee in time. As a matter of fact, he didn't move it at all, which is just a mistake on his part. Take out the flak panzer here, which always like those points. And now, thanks to this quick little offensive here, he brought in about 8 air units, and I got a couple of them back here, as you can see. But it's completely changed where it's now 1585 to 1491 because of those planes being shot down. Look, he lost a couple more, now it's 1626. The land offensive wasn't even that successful. I mean, it took the unit, got their CV, etc., etc., but I lost nearly all my units. You can still see all of his air, but he's losing so many of them to AA that it changed the game. That right there was the tipping point. I distracted him enough. At this point, I'm using my arty, just trying to take a pot shot at his other CV. Here, I'm trying to respond to my teammate's question about the supply trucks. I think he later asked me which ones are the Soviet ones. And yeah, it's now 1742, 1821 for the first point in the game. Really, we have a lead, and we're very close to winning. Over here, he brings in another aircraft, and no, he doesn't lose that one. I think he's going to lose another 1 or 2. But a point I'd like to make is that he lost, I think, about 600 points worth of aircraft just in the last couple minutes here. Aircraft are great. It's one of the coolest new parts about this game on top of European escalation, absolutely. But you can't be so obsessed with it that you use it to counter and attack everything, because it's just way too easy for me to draw in 2 MiGs and get you, or to bring in the AA. You either have to be very, very good at eliminating all your opponent's AA or not. The 2 MiGs finished the game there, and these guys were a little upset. I put a GG in, of course, but if you look at Appletart there, 990 kills, 872 losses. Most of those kills came from the AA, and he says GG spawn campers. Something, again, I've never seen. But thank you so much for watching another video by Doc and Kent Game Guides. I will have another up tomorrow. I promise to try to make it not a Polish deck video or a Highway to Oslo video. Until then, take care, everyone. We'll see you next time.